Lexus has a whole new steering wheel, and believe it or not, it looks like it came straight out of an airplane. I'm talking about the steering wheel in the Lexus RZ450E. Some say it's game changer, others are saying it's strange. Today, we're looking at the new Lexus steering yoke, how it works, and how it compares with the conventional round steering wheel. But more than that, we'll see if the new Lexus steering yoke will cause the same kind of controversy, backlash, and hatred as the infamous Tesla yoke. And stay tuned to get a glimpse of some of the strangest steering wheels in car history to date. When Lexus unveiled its new Lexus RZ450E, all eyes were drawn in particular to a specific part, the steering wheel. And if you're thinking, oh my god, well yes, that's the official acronym for the Lexus steering wheel. Except that for Lexus it stands for One Motion Grip Steering. I mean, just look at it. It's a half wheel shaped like a butterfly, and it's designed so that the driver never needs to turn it more than 150 degrees. Because of this, the driver never has to cross his arms or take his hands off the wheel. So yes, the steering wheel might look cool and novel, but is it any good? Well, it depends on who you ask. The thing is, the traditional steering wheel was invented way back in 1894. Since then, its look has remained relatively the same until rather recently. Tesla sported a steering yoke started in 2021, and now Lexus is testing its ground. So it's not like incorporating this type of steering wheel into a car has never been done before. It has, but just not at this level. If you're wondering what a yoke steering wheel is, well basically it's a U-shaped steering wheel with two hand grips that are connected to a hub. Usually, you see this type of steering wheel in an aircraft. With the yoke steering wheel, a pilot can make minor left or right steering inputs and push and pull the wheel to steer the plane in different directions while it's in midair. But here's the thing, last time I checked, cars don't fly. Most car experts agree that this type of wheel isn't really needed for vehicles on the road. Actually, hand-over-hand turns are a lot easier to do on a round steering wheel than on a U-shaped yoke wheel. Just realize there's a lot of debate and controversy in the car industry over the yoke steering wheel in general. Get this, right now driverless systems are not perfect, but as driverless systems become more popular and ideally more trustworthy, creating a smaller wheel that takes up less space may start to become a more attractive idea. And that's where the yoke steering wheel might finally have a place. Let's rewind a bit and talk about Tesla. A couple of years ago, back in January 2021, Tesla decided to incorporate a yoke steering wheel into its Model S and Model X vehicles. But when Tesla implemented it, customers and critics were left scratching their heads. No one understood why Tesla was offering this new steering design. Initially, this was available only as an option, but then Tesla decided it had to come as a standard. Gone was the round steering wheel, and in was the rectangular yoke. Here's the thing about the Tesla yoke design. It's physically connected to the front wheels, so it takes more than 2 complete rotations to turn from lock to lock. This takes away that smooth spinning element of your average steering wheel. Instead, it's replaced with a choppier motion as your drivers take your hands off the yoke, change their grip, then cross their arms during tight turns. And actually, this choppy motion is even more noticeable at lower speeds. So really, the yoke is more awkward than functional. Here's yet another problem with Tesla's yoke steering system. Tesla's yoke has touch-sensitive turn signals and horn buttons. Problem is, most American drivers are used to traditional turn signals, and most people are creatures of habit. So many drivers found the Tesla buttons to be confusing to use. There's that initial learning curve, and you have to develop new muscle memory when driving such a car. But it's more than that. If your steering wheel is flipped upside down, like when you're about to make a turn, finding and pressing the right buttons could become a pain. All of this is to say that car experts summarized that Tesla's yoke was more of a novelty rather than a unique and functional steering wheel. Now here's the funny thing. If Tesla was looking for a clear answer to whether or not its customers prefer yoke steering or traditional steering wheels, well finally, it looked like it got its answer. Several weeks ago, Tesla offered a retrofit kit that allows owners of the Model S and X cars to replace their steering yoke with a conventional steering wheel. Well, the kit sold out in the first week. If you consider the fact that the traditional steering wheel is now the Tesla store's best-selling item, well then you can see how owners really feel about that crazy steering yoke. Aside from the awkwardness of the steering yoke, some Tesla owners even reported that their Tesla yoke steering wheels were literally falling apart. One owner posted a picture of the steering yoke on Twitter. He wrote that only after 12,000 miles on his Plaid Model S, the yoke steering wheel was already beginning to peel. Some others reported a similar problem. A few even stating that the peeling started happening after only 4,000 miles. Of course, Tesla says it will replace any prematurely peeling wheels under warranty. Yet, the fact that this was not an isolated issue drew even more criticism around the Tesla steering yoke. Here's why Lexus's yoke steering is unique. It comes down to its steer-by-wire system. Lexus claims that the system blocks out unnecessary vibrations from the tires and brakes to enable maneuverability and performance. In a traditional steering system, you'll find a mechanical link between the steering wheel and the steering rack with a steer-by-wire setup. Tesla's yoke is mechanically connected to the front wheels, but for the steering yoke in the Lexus RZ450e, a computer interprets the driver's inputs and controls the angles of the front wheels. The information is relayed electronically or by wire. In other words, the steer-by-wire system interprets the driver's steering maneuvers as a digital signal. That signal is then sent to an electric motor on a steering box that adjusts the steering angle to the front end of the car. Because of this, the computer can then interpret these inputs based on factors like speed, road conditions, and the car's position on the road. The computer considers these factors, then decides how far the car should steer. This can be a major help when it comes to adjusting steering angle at lower speeds or reversing in a parking spot. But once you hit highway speeds, the steering system becomes much more muted. Lexus's steer-by-wire system incorporates what's known as variable ratio steering. This system makes the front wheels turn faster the closer the steering wheel gets to the lock. Because of this, Lexus Yoke eliminates the need for hand-over-hand steering. That's why Lexus believes this contributes to an overall safer driving experience and a major safety improvement. Evidently, the wheel can react quicker in emergency situations. It also takes less effort to react since the driver only needs to flick the wheel instead of his arm or hand over the other. And supposedly, this also makes for a more relaxing ride. Also, a traditional steering wheel can be turned all the way around for a total of 720 degrees, but the Lexus 450 steer-by-wire controller only turns 150 degrees in either direction from lock to lock. Pretty much, a traditional steering wheel, as well as the Tesla yoke, needs anywhere between 2 to 3 full turns to get from lock to lock. So, the Lexus system solves the problem that Tesla's yoke could not. It doesn't have to twirl around 2 to 3 turns. Actually, the Lexus system isn't the first ever steer-by-wire system. However, the latest Lexus design extends the capability by far. In fact, the very reason why the Lexus RZ team decided to implement the steer-by-wire system is because Lexus wants to take on the challenge of electrification and of what's coming next with cars. But let's be clear, yes, the Lexus yoke wheel eliminates the need for hand-over-hand steering. But don't forget there's still a learning curve. Even Lexus representatives themselves are advising drivers to take it slow the first time out until the driver gets used to the difference in motion. That said, they say the learning curve for the Lexus yoke isn't nearly as big as it was with the Tesla. But let's talk about the difference in operating a conventional steering wheel versus a steering yoke. With a steering yoke, if you want to make a 90-degree turn, instead of a hand-over-hand turn, all that's needed is a gentle twist. Because the steering ratio adjusts depending on how fast you're driving, you have to learn how it feels. And that takes getting used to. When you're driving slowly, it can be difficult to figure out the amount of the steering wheel input you need. Obviously, that can cause a rather twitchy ride. You don't need to turn the yoke all the way in a certain direction as you would in a normal car. Smaller inputs go a lot farther than you'd think. So, the first time you try it out, just make sure there aren't too many obstacles in front of you. Here's something most people don't realize until after the fact. Spinning a rectangle is much less natural than spinning a circle. It definitely takes some getting used to. If you've been driving for decades like I have, the circular shape of a steering wheel is burned into your muscle memory. So the first time you get behind a rectangular shape of a steering yoke, you'll most likely reach for parts of the steering wheel that aren't there. All that muscle memory basically becomes irrelevant, and you have to start back to square one. Also, Lexus didn't just install the yoke and keep everything around it the same. It also decided to encourage driver engagement and environmental awareness. Basically, it revamped the cabin. Lexus moved the digital instrument cluster back 1.4 inches and raised it up by 1.5 inches. Actually, that's a welcome change because the cluster is now a lot easier to see. The problem is, the yoke looks almost out of place in the RZ450e and quite frankly, almost feels unnecessary. Actually, if you ask me, I think it's better to try to steer-by-wire technology with a conventional round steering wheel instead of a yoke steering wheel. The technology is good, but the yoke is not. A standard 360-degree steering wheel would benefit just as much as a yoke would when it comes to the advantage of the steer-by-wire system. Now, don't get me wrong, there's still lots of critics of Lexus's new steering yoke. In fact, some are even calling it pointless. Those who categorically criticize steering yokes in general claim that yokes are significantly more uncomfortable to use compared to traditional round steering wheels. They also say the yoke doesn't solve any problems. For yoke critics, the real reason they believe yokes even exist all right now is because some people think they look cool and novel. Plain and simple. Aside from the novelty of it, there's no good reason anyone needs to have a yoke in a normal street driving car. I tend to agree, at least for now. And I'm sure maybe airline pilots and Formula One racers are the yoke's biggest fans. Maybe the next generation of younger drivers who start off learning on how to drive cars using steering yokes from the get-go, maybe those are the ones who'll take the yoke to mainstream. But till then, I think the conventional wheel is here to stay for now. Look, Tesla and Lexus aren't the first car companies to attempt to revolutionize the steering wheel. In the 1960s, Ford tried several radical designs. For example, in 1965, Ford introduced the wrist twist. Basically, there were two small wheels that could be operated in either hand. Ford advertised it directly to women to help them parallel park. Funny thing is, if you pay attention to the ad, the wrist twist didn't even help the actress in the commercial with parallel park either. You can tell because the clip of her plays in reverse to give the illusion she's parallel parking, but just notice the car behind her is driving backwards. Ha! The 1961 Ford Thunderbird offered the swing-away steering wheel option for $25. It was supposed to help drivers get in and out of their cars more easily. It actually became popular with consumers. There were many other attempts from other car makers too, but throughout the decades, car makers realized the fact that simple, circular steering wheel is really the most practical and intuitive way to steer a car. You can't get any simpler than that. If you haven't seen my tech video about steering systems, check it out. Anyway, if you're hoping to get your hands on the new Lexus steering yoke, you're going to have to wait. The steering wheel won't be available on the electric Lexus RZ until at least 2025. But now you tell me, have you driven a Tesla with a steering yoke? And what are your thoughts? Do you think Lexus's yoke will change the game? Please share by commenting below. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for your support.